This is Larry. This podcast is the first in a series and coincides with the launch of our internet, bmscforunity.net. It is dedicated to all that it reaches with the intent that it will resonate with you. You are encouraged to come to your own conclusions using your individual perception, thought process, and spiritual resonance of this material. I am Larry, body, mind, spirit connection, and conduit of the Creator's love and light in this earth. I regularly use my gifts to provide quasi-miraculous self-healing energies to many of the Creator's children, and I do it without giving it a second thought. But it wasn't always so. Let me tell you a bit about my journey. I hope that you find it enlightening. I am retired from whatever it was I was doing before. I realized my spiritual path, and that I was co-creator with the one infinite creator. You can call this entity whatever you like, God, Allah, Source, or Spirit, and any other name you can be at ease with in your own language, ethnicity, and soul. They are different names for the same entity, the one infinite creator. As for my personal history, it doesn't really matter who and what I was. What matters is who and what I am now. Briefly, my father was career U.S. Army and met my mother in 1946. He was born in Ohio and my mother in Paris, France. My twin sister and I were born in a U.S. military hospital in France. I was not naturalized as a U.S. citizen until we actually came to the United States to live in 1961. We had a wonderful childhood, transferring to new tours of duty every 3 years and sometimes less. We lived all over this planet and experienced many things, including the indigenous populations, languages, customs, and religions. Up until third grade, we were in Vietnam and Thailand, and were taught by French nuns. I have some black and white photos of our classes, but I don't remember much about this time. My sister and I followed the Protestant church religious dogma at the request of my parents. We were obliged to attend church services or Sunday school for most of our early years. When we got to some undefined age, they gave us the choice to continue going to church or Sunday school or not. But now it was called Bible study, but both of us said no thanks. This was and remains the extent of my following of any religious dogma, regardless of the number of countries and religions that I was exposed to in my formative years. I am highly spiritual and believe in the one infinite creator. I do not accept what man has written, for it has been changed by man to match his needs at that particular time in our history. My gypsy life continued until I graduated from a military-sponsored high school called Supreme Headquarters Allied Powers Europe in Belgium, SHAPE for short. Imagine trying to explain this to the folks back home. With all the moving we did, we attended many schools in many countries before graduating from high school. My sister and I went in opposite directions. She back to school for the so-called higher learning, and I joined the U.S. Navy. She was and is smart. We're talking Mensa smart. I have had dyslexia since birth and a really tough time with standardized learning and growing up in general. I can still go left when I want to go right. My parents could not understand me or things I did, like watching TV while looking back through my legs at the screen. Really, if you climb onto a chair or sofa with your knees and your head faced toward the back, then arrange yourself so you can look through your legs at the screen, you will see what I mean. If your child does this, I can guarantee you that he or she is dyslexic. Don't worry, it will pass. My dyslexia, and being left-handed to boot, made for a difficult, if not perilous, life. I could get into more trouble in a shorter period of time than most of my childhood friends, and there were many days that I wondered if my father would get mad enough to send me back to where I came from. I did survive, however. My teaching myself in my own way everything that I thought I needed to know. The Navy found that I had a high capacity for piecing together intelligence from a variety of sources and making sense of the result. I became one of the first non-officer intelligence analysts holding a compartmentalized top-secret clearance and was assigned to Commander-in-Chief U.S. Atlantic Fleet in Norfolk, Virginia. Not bad for a just barely made it through high school dyslexic. I was always interested in how things worked, and in particular very interested in energy in all its form. I taught myself the basics of mechanical engineering over the 6 years that I was an analyst, and actually got a job as a junior energy engineer with a firm in Virginia Beach. I got married and spent a total of 25 years on the east coast of Virginia, and had a number of technical jobs which were quite successful. I also started several companies, one of which was to bring me back to my roots in Europe. I worked in Switzerland, France, Germany, Russia, and Eastern Europe, where I developed a successful international finance company. After coming back from one of my European trips, I found I was having shortness of breath, and finally dropped to my knees when I was taking out the back seat of a minivan to make space. Next thing I knew, I was waking up in the hospital after my first near-death experience. The only thing I can remember was that I realized that I needed to go back to my roots in Europe. Unfortunately, my wife said she would not accompany me. This led to an amicable divorce and my departing from the United States. I decided to go to Switzerland since I had already experienced several monthly business trips and felt at home with the country and with its people. It didn't take me long to find and marry the woman of my dreams. I thought that I was set. More money than I ever had, an internationally known and respected finance company, a client list that Wall Street would kill for, and a loving, vivacious, and exciting wife. I was ready to fully retire, but the universe decided to teach me a few lessons, which ultimately resulted in 2 more near-death experiences, the loss of everything that I had built, and the divorce of my second wife. What I haven't told you so far is that I had accumulated much of my wealth by turning a blind eye to the goings-on of some of my clients. My ego and greed had taken over, and I chose not to see what some of my clients were up to. It was only in retrospect that I understood that instant karma does exist, that I had experienced it by losing 80% of my sight in the right eye due to a detached retina. This is the first time that I publicly reveal this. I can now, as I have forgiven all those who participated, and more importantly, myself. I tell you so you might benefit from my spiritual experience, and maybe analyze if there is something that you are turning a blind eye to as well. As the universe would have it, in 2012 I found it necessary to move from Europe back to the United States in order to take advantage of my U.S. military benefits of medical services under the Veterans Administration. I had lost most of the vision in one eye due to a detached retina and could no longer afford the massive Swiss charges for medical services. Events pushed me into leaving everything that I loved and cherished deeply to continue my life in the USA. What I did not know at the time was that my movement was closing the circle of my spiritual path. Our experience and path are a circle, which must be completed. We come into this earth to continue learning and experiencing. It requires many attempts to learn and gain spiritual understanding. Shortly after arriving in Virginia, the universe provided my meeting of a woman that would teach me many things and would provide for my spiritual growth and companionship that we both needed at the time. We are now on separate paths, yet combined spiritually as spiritual brother and sister. I owe this woman my undying love and gratitude. I was first drawn to the Association of Research and Enlightenment, aka ARE, and the Edgar Cayce readings after my mother was diagnosed with cancer back in 1977. For some reason, I knew I could find some answers at the ARE library in Virginia Beach. This was pretty opportune because my first wife and I were living within easy driving distance. I did find helpful readings and provided them to my parents, but my father told me that they could not do anything with them as they would not be approved by the U.S. military doctors. Little did I know that I would be coming back to the ARE some 35 years later, after spending more than half the time living and working in Europe. 5 years ago, the universe decided that I should become a massage therapist, and that this should be at the ARE campus in Virginia Beach, where I would find my full spirituality and the unfolding of my path. But it didn't tell me. At first, I felt that I wanted to work with people that were in a hospice, but I found that I could not even apply anywhere unless I was a nurse or certified or licensed something medical. I set my course to become a licensed nurse with a specialty in hospice care. The universe, however, knew this was not for me, and I failed to get past looking at the schools and wondering how I would pay for them. I kept thinking, how can I be of service without becoming a medical professional? I found the answer after much research. It was to become a massage therapist. The die was cast. Now, how was I going to pay for it? Since leaving to start my new life, I was dependent on a small monthly income from my previous life, and I was pretty much living from month to month with no extra fund to pay for a massage school or the expenses that are associated with going to one. This is when the VA tested my eyesight and pronounced me as legally blind. This status, as it is called, opened up the possibility to have my schooling, expenses, and even my living expenses paid for by the Department of the Blind and Visual Impaired, DBVI, a U.S. government program which is under the Department of Social Security, but it is state-run. The universe helps those that help themselves. One thing led to another, and I was assigned a case manager by the name of Denise. If ever there were angels manifested in this earth, Denise was and is one of them. While I know that she treats all of her cases the same, I felt so blessed having her as my case manager. Our first meeting was to assess my funding possibilities. This is when I first experienced that not having money or income can be a blessing. It turned out that I met all the qualifications to be entirely funded to attend the massage school and have my living and other expenses paid for by the program. The funding, of course, is based on the premise that the result of your graduating will enable you to be employed in your field of expertise, i.e., make money and pay your taxes. I first communicated with Jesus while still looking for the right school. It happened this way at first. I would have tingling when I had certain thoughts about who and what I was, and I would ask the Creator to respond. Several times I would get like a yes or a no to questions by feeling it either on my left side for yes or right side for no after posing my questions. Actually, I made an agreement with the Creator that this is how we would communicate. This went on every time I took the dog out for a walk. He was already getting on in years and needed to go out often. I would come back and tell my companion about it, and we would try to figure out what it meant. I started applying to 2 schools, only to run into difficulties with registration on both. It was while searching the web for a new possibility that I saw that Edgar Cayce's ARE had a massage school. Bingo! The law of attraction does work. The universe had come through once again, and I would never doubt the law of attraction from that moment on. I had to work fast, as the semester started in less than 1 month. I set my intentions in attraction, and it materialized, right on time and with everything in place. It didn't happen just like that. I worked unceasingly for the entire month. The big day came. My companion and I loaded up the car as best we could and moved me into my shared living arrangement in Virginia Beach. It took about 3.5 hours to drive there, including a lunch stop. We discussed how the universe had provided everything that I had asked for, and now it was up to me to make good. Once I was installed in Virginia Beach, I found that I had to walk a long way just to catch a short ride bus to school. So I decided that the walk could only benefit my physical condition, and I walked to and from classes on most days, a trek of about 3 miles one way. I was on one of these treks to class that I actually saw Jesus. There he was, hovering right in front of me, and I finally heard a voice instead of having a tingling sensation. He was holding a lamb in his arms, and he held it out to me. And Jesus asked me, "Will you take care of my flock?" I didn't know what to say, so I asked, "How do I do that?" To which he answered, "You are here to learn to become a shepherd and to bring them safely home." I can only remember that short exchange and wished that these types of verbal communications could be understood more easily. Everything, it seems, was to be communicated in parable, and I don't even remember if I took the lamb. I do remember for certain that it was going to change my life, and change it did. Each day brought something new. Sometimes a new understanding of what I/we are doing here on this planet. Sometimes a sense of being one with plants, the sun, the ocean. The first few weeks of massage school were a blur of learning new ways of how best to manage my personal challenges, which were many. Some of my challenges were actually a blessing. I had multiple NDEs, the near-death experiences caused by 2 separate deep vein thrombosis episodes, coupled with pulmonary embolisms, and over an 80% loss of sight in my right eye due to the detached retina and the resulting surgery, and I was a total dyslexic since birth. Not only that, but I had undergone a C6-C7 fusion. That's a metal plate fusing the 2 last cervical vertebrae together for vertebral stenosis, and just 45 days before starting my classes. Yes, I was determined. Not a single day went by that I did not practice my newfound pastime of meditation. We actually had classes in the first weeks on how to do this, and it worked. I learned how to go deep into self and become quiet. I learned to listen to the universe for answers that I had asked in my thoughts, dreams, and prayers. My walks to and from school became a daily communication with Jesus, just as normal as you would be talking to a friend on your cell phone. Determined or not, I could not keep up with the younger, more educated, and less challenged students. I decided that I needed to take a break to regroup, recharge, and rededicate myself to graduating and becoming a massage therapist. At the end of the first semester, I went back home to my companion, where I could be in an environment that would allow me to start the second semester completely refreshed and wiser with a completely new class. It was like pushing reset. I explained and got approved from Denise of DBVI for this hiatus. We reviewed my challenges and the technology and equipment that could help to alleviate some of my self-induced stress. Bless Denise and the folks at DBVI. This time, the universe went so far as to provide for a lovely apartment for myself and easy access to specialized equipment, including special glasses, computer programs to allow me to spend more time studying, and an easy connections for transportation. I continued to walk to school whenever possible, and now had deep philosophical and religious conversations with Jesus. The parable from our first contact began to reveal itself to me and make sense. As the days moved into weeks and months, I experienced higher levels of awareness that we are not alone, that we are all part of a greater unity and oneness, and that every thought and act that we have or do affects the entire universe and all that are in it. Even back in Berlin, Germany, in my 7th and 8th grade of school, I had healing type of hands. I was able to make just about anyone feel relaxed and warm their skin a little. I had no idea what this was. Now I can tell you, it was the dormant healer that was already manifesting itself through my body. I found once that I had my mind made up to be of service to the Creator's children. I was drawn more and more into the woo-woo world of spirituality and how to increase it and use it. All sorts of things just appeared before me in all sorts of forms, like videos, Facebook postings, books, and articles. I cannot remember when I started to do morning exercises using a modified Tai Chi format. But at the end of my exercises, I started scanning my body to feel if there was any areas where my energy was blocked. I can't remember how I knew to do this. I just did it. I slowly found a new understanding of energy in my body. I found it, but I didn't know what to do with it. This is the end of my first podcast. I hope that you have enjoyed it and that it resonates with you. In my next podcast, I will continue describing my personal path toward becoming the body-mind-spirit connection of this third density called Earth and a conduit of the Creator's love and light, including when I was started seriously applying my energy with conscious intent. Send your comments to info@bmsc4unity.net. I leave you in the love and the light that is the one infinite Creator.